Hello and welcome to the Self Storage Insight Podcast. I'm super excited to be with you guys again today. And so for today's episode, I'm going to talk about transitions. And I talked to my team. And so with CC Storage, we've transitioned hundreds of facilities between softwares over the past 12 months. And I kind of went in with the support and onboarding team, and we reviewed the three things that companies struggle with the most when it comes to transitioning between software providers or transitioning between companies that are supporting their business within self-storage. And so I have the list of the top three things that we identified that companies struggle with as part of a transition. And I wanted to provide that information because it is good for you to know what types of things are holding you back from exploring other options and making sure that the software that you're using to manage your business or that the vendors that you're working with are providing a good service and they're earning your business and not just locking you into complexities and making it difficult to leave. And so I'm going to go over the three things that we've identified from number 3 to number 1. I'll just briefly touch on them so you know what I'm going to talk about in the podcast, and then I'll go and dive into each of those issues a little bit more. So at number 3, I'll go back to number 4. Actually, the one that just didn't make the cut was if a company's using a locally hosted software, that makes it significantly harder to transition. The data is harder to get a hold of, but that one didn't quite make the cut. There's not as many companies that are using that kind of program. Most companies have switched to cloud-based stuff. So that one was just off of the list. Number 3 was going to be the website and transitioning your website from one company to another company. While this is a pretty simple transition, there are some timelines to be aware of and a process behind it. And so I'm going to just touch on that for a minute and talk about, maybe giving you a heads up on what to be expecting there and maybe what you should be doing in advance to prepare for that transition, just so you don't experience any downtime on your website. At number 2, it was proprietary integrations and working with companies that offering their ancillary services, but you couldn't move those over to a new software or to a new provider. And so proprietary integrations making transitions much more difficult. And at number 1, the most difficult part of any transition is the payment cardholder information and transitioning that from one company to another company. Very complex process. Some companies don't even understand it and can't help you with it. And so we've run into some things there. And so I wanted to kind of cover how that process looks, what you should be asking your current software provider or who's running your current transactions. And we'll dive into transitioning cardholder, PCI level 1 data from one software to another software. And it's not actually in the software. And so I'll dive into that a little bit more in detail as number 1. So we'll go back and start with the website. Transitioning your website is a very simple process. If you're using a software that offers online payments and they own your website or they purchased your website to get it set up for you, there's a transfer code that you just call into the support line and you say, hey, I would like to host my own website. And you would simply open a GoDaddy account or a Squarespace account or wherever you want to move the domain to, and they'll give you a transfer code and you go into that account and you'll put the transfer code. But that process does typically take 5 to 7 days. In some cases, it'll move faster. However, if you're looking to close down your old software prior to that 5 to 7 day window, so you don't want to make this call while you're closing your software, you want to request a transfer code prior so you can make sure that the new company has your website ready to go prior to you closing your old account. If the new company has the website built and you're ready to move to that, but you close your old software as you ask for the transfer code, the website will be down until the transfer is complete, which again happens between hosting companies or the URL, where the URL is being moved to. And so that does take 5 to 7 days. And so there is a little bit of a delay. So make sure you get that transfer code requested at least a week. We typically recommend 14 to 21 days prior to closing your old software account so you don't experience any downtime on your website. Pretty simple process. However, some people are unaware of the process behind it. And so I just like to provide that information. On the proprietary integration, so at number 2, we see a lot of issues whenever a company is trying to transition away from a software provider or to move to a new management software that had proprietary integrations, and that makes the transition significantly more expensive. So for example, if you're using a software and they have a proprietary gate integration, or they have, tenant protection, but it's a proprietary company that they own, they will not allow you to work with another software vendor and move either the gate access over to that other, the company won't allow integrations with that gate access. And so you're stuck replacing your gate hardware and your control module. Now, this does cost typically a couple $1,000s, and it makes the transition much more difficult. As part of that as well, with the protection plan, if you're using proprietary protection plans that are with a company, whenever you transition your customers over to a new software, a letter has to be sent. They have to grandfather in. Typically, the customers will grandfather them in. However, sometimes they won't. The new protection plan provider won't grandfather them in. So then you're changing customers' rates on their protection plans, and it does add some complexities to any transition. So mainly, software companies love to do proprietary integrations because it locks you in. And so when your contract's up, you're still stuck. They don't have to provide as good of support or as good of service because they know the transition is much more difficult and much more expensive. And so that's why they offer these things. However, we always recommend, if you're looking to put a gate system in at your facility, and you have options between using a third party that is integrated with your software, but it's not proprietary. Now, the way that they'll sell that is that they'll tell you, the proprietary integration is going to give you additional features. It's going to give you additional reporting. It's built into the system so much better because it's their company. However, that does definitely lock you in. We always recommend working with a third party option that integrates with a software versus a proprietary integration, because the transition is so much more difficult and expensive. And then again, the company doesn't have to provide the same level of support because they have you locked in. And so just something to be aware of as you're looking to transition between management software providers, that if you're using specific proprietary integrations, that transition is more difficult. And then at number 1, cardholder level data. So if your software provider, you reach out to them and you say you want your cardholder information, they're going to tell you that they don't have it. And that is in fact true. They have a token that is going to display the last 4 of the card, the form that's on the site whenever your customers put it in. That's actually the gateway's form. All of your cardholder data is at your processor's gateway. When you're running online transactions, the gateway stores your cardholder information. So that way, when your software tells it to run a transaction, it passes a token over, the transaction runs, the cardholder level data, the cardholder data, though, is not in your software. So the first company that you have to reach out to get this transition to happen is the gateway for the processing company that has your cardholder information. Now, again, there are some complexities around this. The software that you're switching to, and in our case, I do reach out on behalf of a lot of our customers as they try to do these transitions, and I try to start that conversation. However, the company that we're reaching out to has to be willing to talk to us or talk to you. And so in some cases, the owner has to reach out to the processing gateway and request this information. Now, just a couple things that you should know. It is your data. It is your information. The cardholder data belongs to you as the business owner, but they won't just give you unencrypted cardholder data back when you request it. There is an encryption process. And so essentially, you're going to have to reach out to the software or the processor that you're switching to. You'll get their PGP key or their encryption key, and then you pass that over to your processing gateway, and they will encrypt the cardholder data and pass it back to you as the owner. They won't send it directly to the new gateway. They'll send it to the owner. The owner then has this encrypted file, and then they pass that over to the new gateway, or your software company, again, that you're switching to can facilitate in this transition, and you can send it to them, and then they can upload it into the gateway for you. Then what happens is that the new gateway is going to decrypt the information with the unlock encryption key that they have. And again, trying to keep this as simple as possible. They'll unencrypt the data and they'll put it into the gateway, and then they'll tokenize it backwards into the new software. So it is a complex process. It takes 45 to 60 days on average when we're able to complete one of these. But the reason that you should know about this is that there are companies that will not release that data. So for example, Rent Payments, that processes for Quickstore, is one of the ones that we've been working with that will not provide this information. They tell us that they cannot encrypt information and give it to the owner, that is a PCI violation. They are wrong. That is not a PCI. There is no violation. As long as the data is encrypted, they can give it to you. However, some companies just say, no, they will not. And again, that makes the transition much more difficult, because in those cases, you're now reaching out to all of your tenants to transition, and you have to get a new card on file for all of your tenants. And it makes the first 30 to 60 days of any transition much harder. So that is something to be aware of. The companies that don't provide this information just feel like, hey, if we don't give it back to the owner, that makes them stay with us longer. And they're right. It does make it difficult. However, I just like to provide this information because we feel like you shouldn't feel locked into a company because they won't give you your information back. It does belong to you as the business owner. It should be provided back to you. And so we are working with additional companies now, trying to make sure that self-storage understands that this process is very doable. We've been in the payment space a long time. We've been doing this with companies all across the United States. And so we understand how this process works. And those companies should be willing to provide that data back to you. It is your data. You do own it. So without going into too much other stuff on that transition, it's a difficult transition. It's not impossible. And I would love to talk to you if you're looking to do it, regardless of what companies you're doing it with, so I can provide some other additional information on the research that we've gathered from working with companies to transition payments. And so if you want to reach out to me, you can go to ccstorage.com and submit a question on the website, or you can send an email to me at ben@ccstorage.com. And I'm happy to have conversations with you to kind of inform you of how the specific process may work with the company that you're currently processing with. So again, transitioning is difficult. It's not impossible, and it shouldn't be something that keeps you from exploring other options and making sure that your business is being supported by whoever it is that you're working with, and keeping you from going to somebody else just because there's going to be a difficult 30 to 60 days. And so we're going to continue to try to provide additional information on this type of thing, as well as kind of nail down some procedures that we can work with other companies on so we can smoothen out transitions. But I do always like to provide that information because it comes up a lot. We see it a lot in Facebook comments and in the groups where everybody's asking about transitioning, and a lot of companies are just staying where they are because that's easier. However, there are some difficulties in any transition, and so I like to provide some information around those. If you have any specific questions, like I said, feel free to reach out to me. We've enjoyed working in the self-storage space over the past year. It's been an incredible year, roller coaster ups and downs, and it's been awesome. Self-storage is definitely one of my favorite industries that I've worked in, and getting to know the owners and operators has been a lot of fun. And so I always appreciate talking to you guys. We look forward to 2025. We have a big year planned ahead of us. Even with the Self-Storage Insight podcast, we're going to be making some changes here as well. And so excited for you guys to have a big year, and as we roll into 2025. So have a great day out there, guys. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Self-Storage Insight podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Just a quick reminder, this episode was brought to you by CC Storage. CC Storage is a no-cost property management software that allows you to pass the fees for credit card processing on to your tenants, freeing up some CapEx space for your business and helping you more efficiently run your storage facility. If you'd like to learn more about CC Storage, click the link in the description below, and we hope to see you again for our next episode.